На трибунах аллеют знамена, облака в поднебесье плывут. На зеленом ковре стадиона разноцветные майки цветут.
Hello and welcome back to the Russian Football News Podcast. This week we have a packed schedule of European fixtures as we welcome back the champions in the Europa League Group Stages. We'll be unpacking all of the action from each of the three games as Zenit travel to reigning champions Chelsea on Tuesday evening, and then in the Europa League, Spartak and Loko hosted Legia Warsaw and Marseille respectively on Wednesday and Thursday. To discuss all that, I'm your host James Nichols, and as always I'm joined by David Sanson.
Good evening.
And Richard Pike.
Good evening, James. Good evening, David. How are everybody?
I'm particularly good today. I mean, later on we'll also, and the reason why is later on we'll also hear from Ilya Sokolov, and he's going to be joining us live from the RZD Arena to give us his immediate thoughts on Lokomotiv's game against Marseille. Due to that, however, at the time of recording, the Lokomotiv match is actually currently being played, and it is at half-time still 0-0. So expect a slightly shorter, more concise summary on the game, the Lokomotiv game compared to Spartak and Zenit, but that is because we are getting straight from the Loko host, the Loko expert himself, live from the stadium. But Richard, you kept a close eye on Zenit's game in particular at Chelsea away, and what I personally predicted to be maybe quite a depressing night for the hosts, for the away side. They obviously haven't had the best of years in the Champions League of late, and it couldn't have got much harder by travelling to the reigning champions for the very first game. But I think it's maybe fair to say that the performance and result was actually quite endearing for Zenit in the long run, and hopefully they could keep that up in some closer and easier games.
I think we all did, to be honest, James. I think we all were fearing the worst when they had to go to Stamford Bridge. You couldn't have asked for a harder first task than away at the reigning European champions. But yeah, I totally agree with you, actually. Zenit came out of that game with a lot of credit despite the loss. It's I know you never like losing any football game, but if you would have offered them a 1-0 defeat before the match, they would have absolutely have taken it. They would have snatched your arm off, never mind your hand off for it. And it wasn't just the fact that they only came away with a 1-0 defeat. The performance as well was actually quite good. Obviously, it's caveated by the fact that they were having to withstand quite a bit of heavy pressure from Chelsea in the second half especially. But in the first half, I thought they restricted Chelsea to very few chances, actually. Maybe Chelsea had to step it up in the second half. They didn't play particularly brilliantly, but Zenit nullified them really quite well. They lined up in what looked like a 4-3-2-1 formation with Sadar Azmoun up top, with Claudinho and Malcolm behind, midfield three of Wendell, Dalo Kuzayev and Wilmar Barrios, although I will stress that because of the strength of the opponent and how Chelsea were pushing forward in the second half, it did almost become a back three at times. Barrios was pushing back into the defence to help out the central defensive two of Chistyakov and Rakitsky. Sutomin was playing right back. I think Karavayev was injured, and Douglas Santos played left back, and Stanislav Kritschuk was in goal. And yeah, I thought Zenit nullified Chelsea pretty well in the first half. Obviously, second half, Chelsea then stepped it up a gear. And I thought Dmitry Chistyakov had a great game, but there was just the winning goal. Obviously, it was a slight mistake from him, although I will also give Romelu Lukaku a huge amount of credit for his movement in the box as well. Admittedly, probably the midfield could have done more to close down Cesar Azpilicueta, who put in a very good ball for Lukaku. Actually, it was good movement from Lukaku to lose Chistyakov in the box and head the goal past Kritschuk in goal. It was pretty much the only mistake Chistyakov made all night, and part of it, I think, was good movement in the box from Lukaku. I think everybody was relieved when it was, there was some doubts before the game as to whether Wilmar Barrios would actually been able to play this match for Zenit. But I'm so thankful that he did, because I think him and Douglas Santos were outstanding. The amount of times I saw them just constantly intercepting balls in the centre of midfield that, were played through to, the attack, the final third, and the amount of times Santos stopped balls on the flanks. it really, really was impressive from the pair of them. I definitely know as well that the two commentators, one of them was Glenn Hoddle. He and the co-commentator in English really singled out Barrios for praise during the match, which was nice to hear from. Obviously, they were commentating on the game from a Chelsea point of view, but from an English commentary point of view and a Chelsea point of view. So it was nice to hear praise for an opposing player from them. And yeah, both those two had a good game. I thought Rakitsky also was excellent at the back for Zenit. I know Claudinho and Malcolm were singled out for a bit of criticism in the game, but I think this game is one of those where it's caveated by the fact that they're having to do a lot of defensive work as well, because Chelsea obviously, play this 3-4-2-1 formation. They're stacked in the centre of midfield. They create overloads in the centre. And you've got to, some attacking players from the opposing team are going to have to come back and do defensive work against them, especially when you have a gulf in quality like there was between the sides on paper. So Azmoun, at times was getting pretty isolated. Although, to be fair to Claudinho and Malcolm, and to be fair to Azmoun as well, Zenit had a few chances. I remember in the first half, Azmoun had lost, I think it was one of the two Chelsea defenders. I think it was about on the 35th minute mark or something. And he got in front of the Chelsea defenders, and all it needed was a through ball from Claudinho, and he would have been in, but it wasn't a particularly good pass from Claudinho. And then I think on the hour mark, Azmoun had a chance himself, he was through on goal, but his first touch for that final touch was his first touch when taking the last stride before hitting the shot was a bit too heavy, and it allowed Rudiger to come back and clear. And then after it went to 1-0, Zenit obviously had to open up a bit more in attack. And then, I think it was around 80-minute mark. They got a great chance. I think Yerokin played in Azmoun, who appealed to the right. He put a ball deliciously across the box. And Artem Zuba, who come on as a late substitute, he got connection on it, but not enough, and it went wide of the post. And it was a very good chance, but he just couldn't quite get the connection on it. So disappointing with the result, but overall with the performance, yes, Zenit, I think, could feel very proud of that performance. Put it this way, it was just a lot nicer seeing them, even though they were having to do a lot of defending in the game. It was just a lot nicer seeing them keep the ball down on the deck more. There was obviously a few direct passes from time to time, but it was a lot more structured this time round, and probably that performance was better than if you combine all the performances last year in Europe, although that's not saying much. It was better than all the performances in Europe last season, just that one night at Stamford Bridge. And hopefully going forward, this is something now. But what I will stress with Zenit is hopefully, fingers crossed, that they keep. I want to see them keep this formation now. But obviously, they play Malmo at home next. That's absolutely massive now. Obviously, in that game, it's going to be different because on paper, Malmo are not as good, nowhere near as good as Chelsea. So they're going to be doing more attacking in this game. Zenit, the onus will be on them because they're playing at home to be on the front foot and attack. It's a game they've got to win. They can't really afford to draw this if they're harbouring hopes of getting third place in the group. It's going to be different. Hopefully, in this game, Claudinho and Malcolm will be able to support Azmoun a bit more, possibly Wendell too, and the two fullbacks. And that's what I'd like to see from Zenit. This game was the hardest. This game against Chelsea was the hardest game of all their group matches. It's out the way now. They had to play a more tight and conservative match. This now going forward, I'd like to see, and in the home match against even arguably Juve from time to time as well, I want to see a more positive approach now from Samak and Zenit. Get on the front foot against Malmo right from the get-go, get an early goal, put them under pressure. I don't want to see a return to the match against Bruges last year when I thought they typically approached the game too conservative. And this is a Bruges side missing players due to injury and COVID, and Bruges just were all over them. They were the ones playing like they were the home side. So I want to see Zenit really on the front foot against Malmo, put the pressure to them, get an early goal, put them under pressure, and build on this promising performance against Chelsea, because it really will be in vain if Zenit don't get the win against Malmo. I want to see now some kind of building block that's put in place by that honourable defeat against Chelsea, let's just say. Something for Zenit to build on. But there was some encouraging signs, so fingers crossed they can now make the most of these two home games, because I think that game against Stamford Bridge showed against Chelsea that Zenit have got ability. They certainly have talent in their first 11. So it's just a case now of backing that result up with a good performance at home against Malmo.
Yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, it's probably good to play Chelsea now at this point to get them kind of out of the way in what is quite easily probably the hardest game. I mean, having said that, still because of the nature of the group, there is Juve still to come. But that if you look at that Chelsea side, I think everybody expected, as I said at the very top, that just to tear through Zenit, and I absolutely agree. I think it's credit to Zenit for the performance in the game itself, because it's the first time in probably about 3 years that I've seen Zenit look like a team remotely close to competing in the senior level, the highest level. I remember sitting down in a podcast this time last year with Ben from the Belgian Football Pod and discussing how I thought that the quality on show that Zenit had, despite the poor performance the year before, in the second half of the group at least, that I thought that Zenit would have enough to get by Club Brugge, and we all see how that turned out. It was an absolute unmitigated disaster, just really poor defending. It's a shame that Chistyakov made that mistake, because that aside, where I think he just gave Lukaku far too much space, and if you give Lukaku any space like that in the form he's in, he's going to make you pay. Because apart from that, he was, in my opinion, Zenit's most impressive defender, despite being by far the least experienced at the highest level. He actually had a 98% pass percentage success rate on the night, which, granted, a lot of them are quite simple passes into foot to Rakitsky or Barrios either side and around him. But it's always good to see that he stepped up a level and for the most part did look very classy. Obviously, you can't just give him a carte blanche run away, because you can't ignore the mistake. If it was Kayo, would be jumping all over him, and I think it's unfair to blame one so heavily and give the other a little bit of a free pass. It wasn't quite good enough, but it's his first one at this level, and I think you can only learn from it. So on that, while Zenit have looked like they were on at least deservedly of being in the Champions League for the first time in a while, what do you think about Semak and Zenit's approach to the game? Was it too defensive, or potentially entirely warranted, considering the opposition and the situation of playing the champions of Europe last season away from home?
Well, yeah, I mean, I must admit. So obviously, I didn't see the game. I was busy, but I was very worried because in the league this season, defensively, they've been fairly poor. They've not kept too many clean sheets. They've won a lot of the games, but they've also conceded in a lot of those games. Even if it was just one goal, they still concede a token goal in most games. Like, they comfortably beat Ahmad over the weekend, but they did concede also. So I was worried. I was thinking, like, this defence is looking leakier than ever. One thing we could have said about Zenit over the last couple of years is, they have struggled to the league and usually have been pretty solid in defence. And this season, not so much. So I was not particularly optimistic prior to this match. But it is pleasing to see that the defensive strategy paid off. I say paid off. They still lost, but they kept it respectable. I heard that they started the game very well. Had chances, certainly. Just one lapse. I've seen the goal. I've only seen it once, so I can't comment on the Chistyakov thing. But the one thing I was sort of observed at the time was I thought Kritsiuk could have done better with it. It seemed like to me, the near post, his near post as he was stood anyway. So yeah, it's disappointing to go out to a goal like that, or to lose to a goal like that. But you have managers for a reason. Managers devise approaches depending on your opponents. When you're playing the champions of Europe, who typically are a defensive unit themselves, let's be fair, you have to go out there and give them the respect on the pitch. If you go out there and attack, they're just going to make you look silly and hit you on the counter. So yeah, I respect the approach. They gave it a good go. Kept the scoreline respectable. No coefficient points, but decent result. All the same. They now need to go on. The Malmo games, especially the home game, is the must wins. If they want to have any chance of getting out of the group, if they want to be taken seriously in European football subculture going forwards, these are the games where they have to win. Russia has dropped considerably down the echelons of the coefficients. Other leagues have got teams who are more competitive. Malmo, Sheriff Tiraspol, various other countries from around the continent have got teams who are competitive enough against the big teams. Young boys as well beat Manchester United. Russia needs teams who can do that as well, and they have had them in the past. And if they can't go out and beat Malmo on 2 occasions, who are going to be they are going to be a test. We know that Malmo have qualified here for a reason. They're good. They're obviously good enough to get to this stage. They are going to cause Zenit problems, but Zenit should and be aspiring to go and win. So yeah, fine approach versus Chelsea. Take it on the chin, move on.
Yeah.
See how they can do against the Swedes.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very much the same approach against Juventus. Juventus themselves quite solid defensively, maybe not so much as Chelsea, but Chelsea, aside from the sheer quality that they have in the side, especially in the final third, the way they play, the way they control games, and how defensively solid they are, like you said, makes it really hard to get a foothold in that game. I mean, they kept a clean sheet against, just in last year's Champions League competition alone, never mind the rest of the games. They kept a clean sheet against Manchester City in the final, a clean sheet against Real Madrid in one of the legs of the semi-final, a clean sheet against Porto, clean sheets in both games against Atleti in the knockout stages. So they're a real mean unit. And like you said, David, at the minute, Zenit aren't really particularly defending as well as we have seen them in the past in the league domestically. Perhaps a little bit harsh but they set their own bar in previous seasons. But in Europe last season, they tried this approach. They conceded, they sat relatively deep against Bruges and conceded very late in the 93rd minute. For the Dortmund game, they basically didn't attack whatsoever. They only had like 30% possession. I don't think they had a shot on target, and conceded again 2 goals in the last 10 minutes. Against Lazio, very similar sort of game. They did have more attacking impetus in this one than the game against Dortmund, but again conceded within the last 10 minutes after going up. And then after being 1-0 up against Dortmund in St. Petersburg, again conceded twice in the last 10-15 minutes. So I think it was the last 20 in that game. So Zenit have a proclivity to sit deep and make a mistake, one howler. And quite a lot. That was actually Dejan Lovren, whether or not it was intentional or his fault. I think in one of the games, in the Dortmund game, when Sancho was brought down, I guess nothing to do with him, but the Haaland goal, he was just caught sleeping. Just like Chistyakov was, just giving too much space, and these sort of sides really will punish you for that. So credit to Zenit. But the elephant in the room for Zenit, it seems, at the minute, in my opinion, is Artyom Dzyuba. Not just his performances, but Richard, do you think that Zenit are better without the big man? Is that forcing them to play perhaps a better style of football? Or do you think that Dzyuba would have, should he have started last night, on Tuesday night, would he have been an asset to them playing in such a way by being an outlet to get them up the pitch?
No, I think the approach from and the formation of the squad and the team selection from Zenit was correct. I mean, we have to just cast our minds back last year, don't we, to that Club Bruges game where, it just seemed to me like with Dzyuba in that game, they were just literally just lumping the ball to him, and there wasn't really much else. So to me, no, I think now if you've signed Claudinho, who is both a scoring attacking midfielder and a creator, and you've got Malcolm as well, I think now the Zenit have got to build their attacker in Malcolm, Claudinho and Asmoon. I think that's going forward what Zenit are going to have to do. Don't get me wrong, I still think Dzyuba is a very good option to have on the bench. He's perfect for those weekend games after European games, and the odd bit here and there. He's good as an option if you need to change the game from the bench, if you're chasing after a game, and then you do have to get the ball forward if it's the last 15, 20 minutes of a game. But no, I think it's arguably the case now where Zuba's days as a guaranteed start for Zenit are over. I think now we have to accept that I think it's a better fit with Claudinho, Malcolm and Azmoun in the side, because obviously the ball was on the deck more. And I think if you signed a player like Claudinho, you have to build the side around him. You know, they've obviously identified him as this creative player who they need. So no, I think the approach of getting the ball down on the deck and that team selection was the correct decision by Zenit. I think if Zuba had played, it could have been more risky. They could have even surrendered possession more to Chelsea, and I think that might have, you know, they didn't have a huge amount of the ball as you would expect, but they might have had even less. So no, I think the approach was correct from Zenit, and I would start that same attacking three in the game against Malmo and play exactly the same way. Obviously, in that game, Malmo are not going to be as offensive as Chelsea, you would think, as dominant. They're still obviously a side that have to be respected, as David said. They beat Rangers in Champions League qualifying, and Gerrard's Rangers have been very good in Europe the last few seasons. So, but I don't think they're going to have as much of the dominance as what Chelsea did, obviously, for obvious reasons, because Chelsea are a much better side than Malmo. But nonetheless, it's going to involve Azmoun, and Azmoun's going to get more support in that game for the likes of Claudinho, Wendell and Malcolm. So I think I'd stick with the same approach if I was Zenit against Malmo going forward, and I think Zuba's going to have to accept this new role now, I'm afraid, in Zenit's team.
Yeah, definitely. And he's also seeming to accept a new role internationally as well, with him being no longer in the setup as things stand. Other players have taken on that role, and I think it's just an age thing with Zuba. He's not quite, as he gets older, he gets less and less dominant physically over defenders and more intelligent defenders. I mean, look at Antonio Rudiger, someone like him who's a physical specimen as well and a very intelligent footballer. Positionally, I think he's absolutely brilliant. Zuba's not going to get much from that. Azmoun, in my opinion, is just a smarter player and more likely of a goal threat. But on to Malmo next, which is without disparaging Malmo at all, like you said, Richard, good side. The game that you would really be looking for Zenit here to try and get into the knockout stages of the Europa League from, by defeating them. Of course, managed by former Juve player Jean-Dol Thomason. They lost 3-0 at home to Juventus in their first group game on Tuesday evening. But if we will move on now to the Europa League, where Zenit could end up, should they finish third in their Champions League group. And Spartak played on Wednesday evening, despite being in the Europa League. It was actually at 3:45 UK time, which I was very disappointed to find out sitting at work, watching, realising the game had kicked off. But that was because, of course, Lokomotiv are as well playing at home this week and are playing at home tonight. So Spartak had to play yesterday against Legia Warsaw. David, you watched the match. Is this... And, of course, Spartak dominated the game in terms of possession. Couldn't really create a lot. It was a lot of what I like to say pot shots, where it's just absolute no hopers from distance. Jordan Larson had a pretty awful game, continued his scoreless run, and Rui Vitoria's under heavy pressure because of Legia's 91st minute winner, I think it was. So, David, are you surprised by this, or is this just been a kind of a symptom of Spartak's season so far, of these performances, all in a very similar manner?
Surprised? I wasn't necessarily surprised. I had some hope going into it that Spartak, I just had a feeling that maybe they were going to put in a good performance. And to be fair, at half time I wasn't upset. Even at the 60-minute mark, I probably wasn't even upset, because Spartak were dominating, and I thought, well, there's still time. They'll score. They're having all the play, having all the shots. But as you've already said, the shots they were having, particularly from Jordan Larson, who I thought was pretty woeful on the night, and someone, I think it was Richard, mentioned afterwards, he's not scored for 13 matches now. Larson very wasteful. We know Promes loves a long shot. He was also fairly wasteful. just taking pot shots, shooting. I'd love to see the XG. I might quickly Google it while I'm talking to you now, which is very unprofessional of me. But I suspect it's not pretty. They had, I'm pretty sure they had 23 shots versus the 3 or 4 that Legia had. And yeah, there was nothing clear cut. The one big chance that I thought they had, they picked the wrong pass. There was a chance in the first half where whoever, I think it was Ponce, had the ball. If he plays it left, Ayrton's free. He's in. But he played it out wide to the right to Moses, I think it was.
Yeah.
And the attack fizzled out, and Ayrton was visibly, as you might expect, not too happy about that. But yeah, it was not good, and it was fizzling out. They were, wasting chances. I thought they took too long to stick Sobolov. Vitoria put Sobolov on only in the 80th minute. I thought they should have made that change sooner, honestly, because what's 10 minutes? 10 minutes is nothing really to have an impact when you're chasing a goal. I'd have had him on 10 minutes prior to that, personally. So yeah, it was another case. We've seen Spartak essentially just deflate, go very flat since Tedesco left. Vittoria has not had the desired impact at all since coming in, and we know he's on borrowed time. No matter what anyone says, it's just a case of when, not if anymore. He will definitely not be. I would be willing to put a fairly substantial bet on that he would not be Spartak manager by 2022. If he's still in charge by then, he's either turned it around miraculously, or Leonid for them is crazier than we already think he is. Because they're showing no signs of improvement. Spartak are the better team on that night. There's the better players there, and that's why they dominated the game. But Legia set up in that way. They had a decent chance not long before the end. Spartak hit the bar not long beforehand, and then Legia had a good headed chance of their own. So as the game sort of drew on, Legia came out of the shell, and they scored. And the goal itself, dreadful. I don't know if you were going to address this, but obviously the goal as a result of the two fullbacks who are not good enough for this level, Raskazov, and for some reason at this point it was Lomovitsky playing at left back because reasons I don't know. But these are two guys who are only playing at Spartak because of the limit. We know that Raskazov has in the past had offers to go to Germany, to Augsburg, but he's not. He's still around. He gave up as the Legia guy knocked the ball past him and sprinted down the line. Raskazov just assumed it had gone out of play. It didn't. It stayed along the line, and Lomovitsky's let his man go at the back post for the tap in. It's like we're a broken record. We come back to it every time. It's results made because of the quality of players, and the quality of players is low because the teams are forced to have them and play them because they need a full playing squad, and those are the best players currently available to them. And ultimately, that it's not what cost them. It's one of the many reasons that cost them on the night. They were wasted from the attack. Their foreign players were not good. Obviously, they had injuries. Zobnin went off injured. Hendricks took a knock as well, but finished the game. Multitudes of reasons, but not a good result. Obviously, on paper, their easiest game of the whole group stages. Legia at home, and they're going to face an uphill struggle. We predicted that beforehand anyway because of how they'd started under Vitoria. They are going to face an uphill struggle now to get out of the group, even more so. It's like they've started to climbing and Legia have just kicked them off after they got a third of the way up or something. So yeah, it wasn't good. And yeah, I don't know what else to say, so I'll just stop talking there, I think.
I think it's almost like what we're seeing now in Rui Vitoria is very much what we were warned about when he was rumoured to have taken over and then before we heard that he did or would be pretty soon. And from those in Portugal, it was generally that he's quite both an insipid character who's uninspiring, who gets his team to play both insipid and uninspiring football. If you cast your minds back now to the early days of Domenico Tedesco's time at Spartak, early doors Tedesco would play what was a very, very heavily possession-orientated style, with Riskasov at right fullback, right wing back, and then Kutupov just inside him. It was aimed to dominate the opponent. Domestically, they did dominate possession, but created very, very little. Even with Sobolev, Ponce, and Kral and Larson and all them players still there, still in the same team. The only ones missing really were Promes, who hasn't exactly lit up the game since his return, too busy with his various court cases in Holland. But anyway, this Tedesco side was quite pedestrian. They would turn to the flank, wing back would rise very high, very wide, try and overload. But all this generally did was just create huge amounts of vacant space within the Spartak team. And they hadn't bought into and learned enough of Tedesco's philosophy. As time wore on, you saw the impetus, you saw the drive, you saw them understanding what he wanted more and more. Yes, they were a little bit of a glass cannon defensively at times, absolutely woeful. You basically had Gijo and Jikia defending on their own and then everybody else in the final third. Thus, because of that, Spartak were awful defensively at times. We all remember just how horrific they were at defending set pieces under Tedesco and prone to a counter-attack, especially like a lateral positional move. Rubin have got a very good record against Tedesco Spartak, and that's exactly how they took advantage of it. So it's never perfect under Tedesco, but going forwards, he really did change that side into a really exciting and dynamic one. There's absolutely nothing of that. It's almost like we've just went back in time 18 months and found, and that's how Vitoria's decided to go about the game. It's literally just dominating possession, sometimes for the sake of it, recycling of play, sometimes for the sake of it. There was one opportunity when I think it was Ejikia carried the ball up from defence. He's decent at. He's not as good as Gijo at, but he's all right at it. And there was a real good pass on to Sobolev in the middle, and Ponce could have been free. Like, it was a nicely 1-2 sort of situation that you would have seen. Quickly played, fast, flowing football under Tedesco. And he just turned around and gave it back to Gijo. And there's too many times that's happening under Vitoria. It's almost like they're either getting completely bollocked and afraid to make a mistake, where from, I don't know, or they don't really know what to do, or they're being told to hold back. It's just totally pedestrian. If you look at some of the XG per 90 figures per player, Quincy Promes, I mean, David, you mentioned earlier that Promes likes to take his shots on. Now, Promes has got 4.35 shots per 90, which is the highest in the entire Spartak team. This is from Understat, everyone, by the way, who have got good metrics on the RPL. This is domestically, of course, as well. But Promes' XG per 90 is 0.14. Something like 60-70% of his shots are taken from 25 to 30 yards out. It's a totally different Promes to the one that you saw a couple of years ago. Obviously, he's not as dynamic. He's had a pretty rough couple of years off and on the pitch. But it doesn't even look like the same type of player trying to make the same type of runs. So much of Spartak and his game, Promes himself's game, is just hit and hope. And that's like Promes' situation is like a microcosm of Spartak's. And a lot of it comes down to what was essentially a disastrous summer that had the worst transfer window in the entire the RPL, including Ufa, who didn't spend a bloody penny because they don't have a structure at the top which is intelligent enough to go and find a gem, to train a player, to get good people in behind the scenes without having to spend a lot of money. That's the only thing that Verdun knows how to do, is to spend and try and fix things by spending more. The fact that Lomowicki came on and played left wing back was just absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, I'll stop and I'll give everyone a breather because sometimes it's just as easy to discuss and hate about those things that you love as it is be happy about it. Richard, what were your immediate thoughts from the Spartak disaster yesterday afternoon?
Yeah, obviously this game I was on when I was at work. I'd finished work and then I managed to catch the last 10 minutes of it. The frustrating thing for me was like in the last 10 minutes of it, I was weaving in and out of, watching the game and then checking the stats on Flash Score. And even though Spartak was having all those chances, when it was 0-0 in 85 minutes, I got that sudden chill inside of me thinking they've not taken chances. It's going to mean a late Legia winner. And look what happened. And it's so depressing. It is just literally so depressing because this was supposed to be the game which represented their best chance of a win on paper. I know Legia have not had a particularly great start domestically in Poland. So it's even more depressing that the quote-unquote easiest game on paper has now disappeared, and the two favourites for the Europa League so far are in their group as well with them, with Leicester and Napoli, so they might have to set up the barricades at Akriti Arena for the next two matches. I mean, everything about it is just really, really depressing. I had a look at the coefficient today for 2024 at lunchtime, and I think Russia is going to be 26 now come 2024, and depressingly Legia's win. Poland is in 27th come 2024, and Legia's win means even Poland is catching Russia now for 27th spot, 26th spot. So it's not good. It really is not good. And I totally echo and agree what David said about Raskazov and Lomovitsky. And I'll even throw two more in as well to that. One of them's now left the club, obviously, but Artem Timofeyev, he only just left the club in the summer. And then Ilya Kutepov. There's four players there who all Spartak Academy products. And let's be honest, none of them really should have been there last season or this season. They're just not good enough. They are basically lower end RPL players. Maybe Raskazov has potential to be a middle to upper end RPL player in the future, but definitely not now. Maybe middle end is probably, and maybe Kutepov middle end as well. But Lomovitsky, he's been out on loan at Arsenal Tula. I don't think I'm particularly impressed there. And it's the foreign limit. If these people just cannot see that this is the issue, and so many people now are waking up and finally starting to see it. I think I saw a tweet from Yevgeny Kafelnikov, the former tennis star. I think he supports Spartak, and I think he tweeted something sarcastic about, but the limit gives chance for some of our own to play. Let's keep playing Lomovitsky or something along those lines with like an ironic smile from emoji smile. And everybody can see it that the foreign limit is the issue. And I mean, I just had a look at Legia's just squad for that game yesterday. And there'll be people who defend the limit keep saying, well, look at Legia's side yesterday. There was 5 Polish players in the starting 11, so that proves it works. Do you want to guess how many foreign players are on the bench and in the starting 11 combined for Legia? 15. 15 foreign players. There were 6 on the starting lineup for them and 9 on the bench. So that just shows you 15 non-Polish players. They've got so much more depth on the bench than Spartak could dream of, and until this is fixed, Russian football is it's going to go literally nowhere. Like, if they're really serious about it, obviously, there's other issues other than the foreign limit. Vitoria, I accept, has not done well, but the foreign limit, it just needs fixing. If it's not going to be fixed, then I really don't know what's going to happen, because we're going to be having, like we were saying with David said, we're just going to have these same old conversations over and over again, and it's just not good.
No, it's not. It's nowhere near good enough. I would like to give a little bit of shout out. You mentioned Legia players, but a little bit of a shout out to former Krasnodar right back Artur Jedrzejek, who basically defended like an absolute demon. It's absolutely brilliant. Rolling back the years, I think he's 34 now. He must be a kind of age, because he was at Krasnodar way back in 2013 when they went back before they'd even built the full academy and everything. But it's just so many issues that you can see. And I'll focus back onto Spartak here, because I agree entirely about the limit. It's ridiculous that you see people like Alexander Lomovitsky playing at left wing back in a Europa League game. But it's quite ironic that before the game, Verdun had like a demand to the players. I'm not quite sure if this was personal or if it was told over some form of social media to them, or via text or email or what. But he basically demanded to the players that they wash away the shame of 2011. That shame of 2011 is when Spartak lost in stoppage time against Legia. Ironically, so they washed away the shame of 2011 by creating a new shame of 2021. For those unaware, of course, as we kind of briefly mentioned when discussing the groups, that Legia are big rivals to Lech Poznan, who have got a partnership with Spartak, and it's just one of those club partnerships. So as a result, Spartak don't get on with Legia Warsaw. I mean, I don't think the vast majority of the footballing world get on with Legia Warsaw as fans, but it's just ironic that Verdun demanded that when so much of what's happening is from him. It's his direct fault. If anyone needs to wash away the shame, he can demand that upon himself, because the way that he and those around them and those in the annals of power at Tashina, the way that they've treated themselves, the way that they have acted, and the way that they have took the piss out of the club is an absolute disgrace. It's an absolute disgrace. And the fans are furious, and rightfully so, furious. They have been for years. The only thing that abated Spartak fans' fury at Verdun was that one league win. And it didn't stop it, it just abated it, because everybody knew that was a fluke, largely by the fact that a lot of other teams weren't quite as good that year, and they had hit the perfect storm of a very good group of players playing together at one time, with Promes in the form of his life and Carrera just getting the best out of the side. All of that wasn't because of Verdun. All of that was in spite of Verdun. He's an absolute joke. The man is useless. He doesn't have a clue what he's doing. And then yet you go and have a scroll through some of the sections of the media, and it's all about, Spartak could have had this if it wasn't for a penalty for the tackle on Ayrton. Or it's like, Spartak could have had this if it wasn't for the injury to Zobnin. Or it's, but if they've done something in the transfer, if it's already, if it's on Vitoria, it's his fault. So let's be real, it's not Vitoria's fault. When it comes to Spartak exclusively, 99.9% of the problems are top down. It starts and stops with him. He's useless. If you just look at some of the coverage in Russia, in Poland, and there were literally the headlines in one of the Polish daily sports papers was Spartak on its knees. They were absolutely reveling in Spartak being beaten by Legia in the way that they were, absolutely shithoused by Legia. And I mean shithoused in the type of performance, not to take it away from Legia whatsoever. But David, any final thoughts yourself on Spartak, and where can they go from here? Because that's the game at home to Legia. You're really looking at them getting maximum points from.
Yeah, I echo everything you said. I was making the point on social media yesterday. It all does stem with Verdun. While Vitoria is not doing a good job, he hasn't got the best tools available to him, and that's not all his fault. It's not even all Verdun's fault, because obviously some of the buck comes to and starts with the people who head the Russian Football Union, etc., etc. We all know this by now. Where they go from this, they're going to need to fix up very quickly and hope that they can put in some big performances against some tough teams. Not much more to say on that. I did check out the XG. So Loko. Sorry, I'm thinking Loko because I'm watching it at the corner of my eye. Spartak had 23 shots with a total XG of 1.6. So that was an average XG per shot of 0.07. So essentially, by my maths, that's a 7% chance of every shot going in. Legia created 1.4 out from just 7 shots, with a 20% chance of each shot going in. So, and out of the 23 shots that Spartak had, only 3 were on target. I should add also. Not a good showing in attack. I think we all sort of queried the return of Promes. Would it be the same? He only scored his first goal for the club this weekend, just gone, right, since he has returned. which goes as far as saying how well he's settled in to back to Spartak and back to the situation that they're in. But we know that team can score. Last season, all three of those strikers, Larson, Ponce-Solev, hit double figures for goals in the league. So we know there's goals there. And what's the thing that's changed? It is ultimately, obviously, the manager. The style of play has changed. The motivation that they got from Tedesco. Tedesco was a character. So many things have contributed to this. We now have to just grit our teeth and bear it and hope that Spartak can chuck up a surprise. Maybe they can, do a Zenit. Maybe they can, pull out one of those big, defensive performances. I mean, it's a lot to ask. The centre halves are good. I don't have much question about Jikia and Jigo performing at this level. I think they both can do it. But it's going to be getting the fullbacks, because Ayrton's great, but he's more of a wing back going forwards. In defence, he can be a bit suspect. And if Lomovitzki gets to play, let's also recall that Lomovitzki played the full 90 in the qualifier for the Champions League as a winger, because obviously Promes and Moses were both injured. So there's a multitude of things, and we just have to hope for the best, I think.
It's quite bleak. It's all quite bleak from a Spartak perspective. That was at the weekend Promes's third goal for Spartak since returning. He did, of course, score twice last year. Yeah, URAL, remember?
I don't know. I don't know why I read that. I'd read that somewhere, and I didn't check it. I just assumed it was true.
When they slaughtered URAL just after Promes had signed, and everyone got really excited because him and Larson were unreal together.
Oh, yeah. And it barely counts against URAL, though, does it? He's pretty...
Hey, it's going against Akmat as well.
Andrew Flint will be the first to admit that URAL are not the best team this season.
No, that's because Eric McFalvey's passed it. He's now for 55.
Oh, that's the only reason, yeah, of course.
No other problem. So it's now finally full time in the Lokomotiv match, and Loko did go 1-0 down early on from a penalty by Cengiz Üner after Nayer Tiknisian was sent off. But Faustino Anjorin did score his first goal for the club in the 89th minute to level it all up. And next we'll be hearing directly from the RJD Arena, live from the RFN Lokomotiv correspondent, Ilya Sokolov. So, Ilya, what part of the RGD Arena are you joining us from now, long after the game?
Yeah, I'm near the metro station, and a lot of strange guys around live in the stadium. So I hope it'll be a short conversation because I'm gonna want to go home right now.
Yeah, of course, no problem. I'll just steal a few of your minutes. So, first of all, as I said before, I forget our priorities correct right at the start. How was the hospitality and the food in the press box and around the ground today?
Well, I was very hungry today, so I went straight to the food kiosk and bought chicken shashlik, and it was great. It was amazing. I was the first guy who bought it because I came to the game early. Then I went to. I was still hungry, so I bought a hot dog. It was cheapy, and I would prefer a bit more sauce, more ketchup. So I didn't like the hot dog. Hot dog gets 3 out of 10, and shashlik it's definitely 10 out of 10. So I was still satisfied, and moreover, what I liked about the match day, it was there was a car from a Taxi movie, and that's an important movie for me because I guess it was the first DVD I've ever watched, Taxi 3. That was the first movie I ever watched on DVD, and I had a lot of feelings about it, and it was definitely great to see the car. I tried to Google some songs from Taxi Trois, and they're all banned on Spotify and on Yandex Music, but still, so a lot of nostalgic feelings.
I'm not really surprised at the band, to be honest, especially on Spotify. But I did wonder when I'd seen the as a little insight to how RFN works for everyone. Whenever Ilya's got accredited for a match, he'll send us a variety of photographs of the game around the ground, some spectators, and it's like a big collection of them every game. And I did wonder why there was four just of a Peugeot car just outside of the ground. So that makes complete sense. But if we will move on to the match itself, how did you think Loko played? Because I know beforehand we spoke earlier today, and you said that you were not optimistic at all, and were expecting quite a heavy defeat at the hands of Marseille.
Yeah, first of all, look at this card. I was really afraid when I found out that we don't have Macho Rebus, and we had Nick Tiknesian as a sub, and I didn't like the midfield. They're all. I don't think that Beka has like a connection with the other guys, and the game definitely showed that Lokomotiv counterattacks weren't that lethal as they were in RPL, and so yeah, I was expecting something like a 0-3, 0-4, a comfortable win for Marseille. We got a great result instead.
Yeah, definitely. It's by far the best result of the week, especially compared to Spartak's disaster against Legia. But it's good to see Tino and Joran getting on the score sheet, obviously getting his first goal for Loko. I just wondered, before we do discuss how Joran played when he did play, what's your thoughts on him taking, obviously Loskov gave it to him, but taking Loskov's number out of retirement to wear on his back?
Oh, yeah. I don't care about it a lot, especially after, if you remember Loskov retirement, like he finished his career and then he suddenly appeared for one game when he was like 40 something, and he didn't look like he looked like an American football player. Like, yeah, that's definitely not a soccer player. I was at that game. That was great. Like 10 minutes of masterclass from that guy. So I think like any guy deserves number 10, and maybe it gives him a boost because maybe he feels that it is important, and he definitely showed today that he can be that guy. He costs like 17 millions. We gotta pay for him this winter if we want him to stay.
Yeah, and it's nice to see a prospect come on loan from the English Premier League to the Russian Premier League. It's something that really doesn't happen very often. And what I liked about him when he came on is I thought he didn't give the ball away once. I mean, he wasn't massively involved as you would expect. Marseille were still largely bossing most possession. I think they had 75% or something like that by the end of the game. But every single time he got the ball, he made something happen. He just looks like he's potentially going to be coming to Loko and bringing some real class to the team. What did you think about Rangnick and Zorn's transfers by getting rid of some of the older players and making the squad younger in general, bringing in Beka and Anjorin and a couple of others? Do you think it's been a successful transfer window?
Yeah, I'm really excited about these guys. And first of all, I'm really excited that we do have a strategy of buying young players, and I think it wouldn't be very hard to sell them even if they fail, because they're still young. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's hard to understand if it's Ragnik's strategy or maybe if it's Thorn's strategy, because he did the same in Spartak. And you can't actually say that he failed, because even the players they didn't become stars, but Spartak managed to sell them to big clubs, despite their performance was like average. So so I'm excited, and I actually like both Angerin and Kirk. What Kirk showed in his friendly game against CSK, and then the next game against Sevilla, he can dribble past defenders. He's like, I think he's the guy who makes a lot of key passes every game, and he's a great fantasy football addition. That's my advice.
Yeah.
As for other guys, yeah, and also, of course, I don't like that we pay like 5 to 7 millions for the guys from CSK Moscow, because we help them to get a lot of money for pretty average football players. And Nair Tiknizan showed today that he's definitely not the first option as a left back. And today we all understood what Lokomotiv looks like without Maciej Rybus, and who's I tell you every year that Maciej Rybus is a key player for Lokomotiv, because he can be dangerous in attack, and he's the best left back in the team. And actually, Marko Nikolic was asked at the press conference why Silyanov didn't play from the start. But he said he had just one training before the game, so he wasn't ready. But Nair Tiknizan definitely didn't seem to be ready to.
No, I think Tiknizan, when he was at Siska playing left back, he did an all right job covering against more average players. But when you're playing Marseille in Europe, I think today his lack of genuine quality and lack of intelligence really showed, and Rebus was quite a big miss. Kirk, I agree. I think Kirk seems to be an intelligent player. I had read that when he had been told by Dutch journalists when he had arrived that he was very much more so in the frame of Kamano, where he was going to not do a great deal up until the final third and use his finishing and his pace. But Kirk's a lot different to him. He gets involved in the game far more. And I thought when he came on, or when Kamano came on, he obviously changed the game for Loko. He scored 2 goals last week. But Kirk, I thought, still played quite well and applied himself very well. And although he's still only early in his career, Maradashvili, I do quite like as a player. I don't think he's one of the best young Russians out there. I think Mukin's better. You might not like me saying that, obviously, because they're swapped. But I think Loko only overpaid for him because of the sheer price. Because he's Russian, just for the passport. But Ilya, pretty much perfect start in terms of playing such a difficult team in Marseille, being down to 10 men. And that was when Anjorin came on and changed the game, played far faster. Do you expect Loko to think we could progress from the group and get through to the knockout stages?
Yeah, well, I didn't watch the other game between Galatasaray and Lazio, and I don't know these teams well, so I don't know what to expect from them. I'm really happy we got a point against Marseille, because Marseille definitely looks like a much stronger team, and maybe they're just more ready, but still we managed to get the point. And what I liked about the game today is that after we lost a player, we I think we played even better than 11 against 11. Maybe Marseille doesn't know how to score, how to convert the possession into goals, and that's our chance in the away game. And as for other two teams, there, I don't know. Lazio looks like one of the top teams in the group. So, but the thing is, they still have Caicedo as their striker, who wasn't like starving at Lokomotiv, but he's like, I guess he's one of their best players. So maybe that shows that their level is not that high. Like our strike is definitely better. There's first small of what a shot today. Just not unlucky.
Yeah, really unlucky. But it's weird because Caicedo scored against Zenit last season as well, if I remember rightly. But I think personally, Loko might. I mean, the group's wide open now because the two sides you would have expected to win, Marseille and Lazio, neither of them have won today. Obviously, the last minute equaliser from Loko, and then Lazio's goalkeeper scoring an own goal, and what you don't hear about very often. But Ilya, thanks for joining us. We'll let you get away and go and find yourself some warmth in Moscow and get yourself home. But thanks again, and great result today for Loko as well.
Yeah, thank you. And don't forget to watch RPL games this week and make subs in your fantasy team.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Speak later, mate.
Yeah, bye.
And with that, that's the end of this week's podcast. We'll be back as normal at the usual time next week with some more domestic-orientated action. As Ilya said, don't forget to check all of your fantasy team subs and catch up with some RPL action this weekend. To have a little quick look ahead to some of the RPL action. The big games include of course, Moscow derby between CSKA and Spartak, and that's at 5:30 p.m. on Monday evenings. That's be 7:30 MSK. Other games also, big one at the top with Rubin hosting Zenit, Sochi Dynamo, and then all the way down to some of the basement battlers playing together. So it's going to be quite a big weekend, and hopefully looking for quite a feisty game in that Moscow derby on Monday night. Until then, this has been the RFN podcast. Goodbye for now.
Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Идет футбольный матч, летит над полем мяч. Веди его, беги, точнее его ударь. Но мяч берет с ноги решительный вратарь. Не напрасно футбольное поле самых ловких и смелых влечет. Здесь нужны тренировка и воля, быстрота, увлечение, расчет.